What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and today I want to give you my thoughts on Atlas Reactor, having spent the last week really getting to grips with the game, played just over 100 matches, so I feel like I've got a bit of a handle on what it's all about now, and tell you guys a bit about actually why I really quite like this title and feel like it's a little bit different. I've got to get this out of the way immediately. This is a sponsored video, however all opinions are completely my own. So let's kick off with the really obvious question. So Atlas Reactor is a 4 versus 4 turn-based game in which the turns play out simultaneously and you have 20 seconds in order for your entire team to decide what it is that they're going to do and attempt to predict what it is that the enemy team are going to do. The game has a large variety of heroes and abilities on those heroes, and the main premise behind how it all plays out is to do with the turn structure, where you have 4 different phases and different abilities will go off at different phases during the turn. Meaning that something that's cast during the prep phase will happen before something that's cast during the blast phase, and so on. What this ends up resulting in is an almost rock paper scissors style game where you're both trying to predict what the enemy is going to do in order to hit them and choose the right ability in the right phase in order to do so, as well as trying to predict what they are going to try and do to you. The biggest example of this is the dash ability, which takes part as the second phase that happens in the turn, and it is pretty much the only way that you can escape enemy fire. Movement is always the last turn, which means unless you use one of these abilities, you are going to get hit if someone shoots at you. Of course, you can start to get together from this how you may well not know whether they're going to shoot at you, so it's about whether or not you want to risk using your dash or not using your dash, and vice versa. They're crazy moments where you're trying to keep track and predict what it is that the enemy are about to do. And don't forget, this isn't just you and them, one person aside, this is your 4-man team and their 4-man team, which results in probably the most intense turn-based experience I have ever played. I'm going to quote a friend here because he definitely gave the best description of the feeling I've heard so far, which is it's like those rounds in XCOM that come up every few games where you know it all rides on that one turn. It all rides on it going just right, or you're going to lose your hero, you're going to lose something. Except that's almost every turn, and almost every game has those moments in them. Now there is one area of the game, how it works, and more importantly, how you get your hands on it, that I feel warrants its own section. So, is Atlas Reactor free to play? Honestly, no. Unlike a lot of games in this area, in particular MOBA games, Atlas Reactor uses a somewhat different model. It has what it calls a free mode, and this will enable people to go in, play the game for free with a hero rotation that's very similar to what's used in Heroes of the Storm, League of Legends, those sort of titles. The main and primary difference to those titles is the game can also be bought outright. For $29.99 or your regional equivalent, you will be able to buy the game, which unlocks every hero the game will ever have. What you cannot do, however, is actually earn or unlock heroes without doing this. So unlike some of the MOBAs where you'd work towards a character that you particularly enjoyed, a favourite character that you wanted to work on, and even in the free-to-play modes, be able to get your hands on that character permanently, in Atlas Reactor that's never going to happen. Next week your heroes are going to change, you are going to get a different rotation, and you are not going to be able to play the hero that you were playing the week previously. Now one positive thing they have done, because the free mode is designed to allow people to get in the game and try it out, is ensure that different people have different rotations. So you're never going to go for a week where you're repeatedly seeing the same heroes on the battlefield. But this does mean that if you really want to enjoy the game and progress in the game properly, you are going to need to buy it outright. I personally don't believe there is any real longevity behind the free mode, especially given as it also limits you in a number of other areas, like being able to play ranked games and being able to make custom games. I think the best way to look at Atlas Reactor's free mode is not as a free-to-play game, or a free-to-play way of playing the game, but as a very, very extensive demo that means that you can be certain you enjoy the gameplay and the type of game it is before you decide to purchase it. Either way though, as an approach, I don't think this is a bad way of doing things. Certainly, being able to try a game out before you buy it and get that much access to the product is quite unusual, and personally I would like to see more games designers and more developers take those sort of approaches so that we get a good idea in advance. Now, a word that came up quite often in that section describing various bits of the game and in the bit before was MOBA. So, is Atlas Reactor a MOBA? Well, while technically it does fit the literal description of a MOBA's also become something that in the gaming community we understand to mean a certain type of game. And when it comes to comparing Atlas Reactor to games like League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, Dota, the games that people will normally think of when you use the word MOBA, I would say the answer is very much no. There are a number of very important ways in which this distinguishes itself from what we usually understand as a MOBA. So the first area where it differs quite dramatically, and some people will like this, some people won't, but I personally think is actually quite positive, is that there's no in-game character progression. So in most of those other titles, when you're in the game itself, you will be leveling up your character, it will be purchasing items, unlocking new abilities. None of that happens in Atlas Reactor. You start off with everything available to you, and if anything, you get slightly weaker as the game progresses because you use your catalysts, the one-time use items that you get to pick and take in with you. For me, however, especially with the length of the games, how intense they are, how short the turn times are, I consider this to be really positive. The main reason being that in most MOBAs, snowballing is a major problem. If you go into a game and you're not doing well from the start, towards the end it will become pretty much pointless even playing. You are not going to be able to catch back up again. Not unless some huge error is made by the other team. With Atlas Reactor, I never really felt that happened. At no point during even the game where we were being dominated the hardest did I feel helpless, did I feel like there was no point continuing to play. Now of course, if an enemy team takes out 3 of your guys, you've got 1 person left, he is probably going to get hammered really quite hard. So you could say that is an element of snowballing in itself. But honestly, given it's first to 5, I never really had that feeling. It always felt like I had something to do, some way in which I could really still impact the game and have a chance at pulling it back. So from that angle, I consider it really positive. And if you take into account as well, trying to manage upgrading yourself, buying items, things like that in a 20-second turn that's already, trust me, too short for all the things you want to think about and do, would just be way too overwhelming. Another way in which I feel Atlas Reactor distinguishes itself is from the very turn-based nature of the game. Now yes, this may seem really obvious, but what it means is skill shots, things like aiming, aren't anything like as much of a thing in Atlas Reactor. There's something you get to spend a bit of time over, and it becomes very much about trying to outthink the opponent constantly, try and decide where they're going to be next, what are they going to do this turn, can I avoid it, can I help one of my friends? And you have a bit of time to think about all of this, but also you have a lot of information at your hands to think about this. So by holding Alt you can view enemy cooldowns as long as they're in line of sight, you can see what abilities people have ready, what they've already used. So for example, a lot of the meta of the game revolves around the dash mechanic, which is the second phase in the turn, so it happens very early on, and it is the only way you can escape direct fire. So it's all about not only keeping track of the enemy's dashes, it's about trying to force them to use it on your terms, get them to use it where it's inappropriate to do so, and catch them out while it's down, knowing that they can't get out. This done right, you can literally take someone out in a single turn if you've caught them in a bad location and your entire team's got shots on them. But equally, the enemy team can predict you're going to do this and try and prevent that with their own abilities, or if the enemy with the dash is particularly clever, they're going to predict that you're trying to force the dash out of them and not use it, so it is ready for the turn where you've got them caught in the middle. All of these sort of elements, I feel, while they probably exist in the standard MOBA environment, it's all playing out so quickly that not only is there a very big barrier to entry for your average player, but also it's very hard to see this all going on. It's quite obfuscated behind the fact that it's all real time, it's all going off incredibly quickly, and you often don't have the information at your fingertips to see what's happening. You don't have that ability to press Alt and see where everyone's attacks are going to be, where everything's going to land, what cooldowns your enemies have. And what this ends up doing is creating a pretty unique gameplay style that I find incredibly rewarding. When those moments do pay off well together, when you can coordinate with your team, when you do catch them out just right, or vice versa, you do get out of that situation that they thought they had perfectly set up. It is incredibly rewarding. It really does feel great when everything plays out like you had planned in your mind and you see it all unfurl. And of course it can also go completely the other way. You make a clever plan that you think is going to obliterate everyone, and then it goes horribly wrong, and at the end of it you're the one that ends up dead. Even that at times can just be quite fun to watch and see. You get such a visual representation of people's thinking and how it can just be really, really clever. You can just watch guys and watch them predict where you were going to escape to and actually land the shot there, and you just can't help but think to yourself, damn. Okay, you got me good there. That was clever. I just don't feel the same bile at losing in this game as I do in some of the other ones. It's very hard to put your finger on what exactly it is. It's partly the turn-based nature, it's partly, as I said, how rewarding it feels just seeing other people's plans go well as well. And partly it's that lack of snowballing. It's that feeling that even at the end of the game, oh, if I just respawn in time, I can dash across there, maybe I'll get enough energy for my ultimate, and then I can take down those three. I just need them to not move. Yeah, that's enough of that. Hopefully you guys get the idea of what I'm talking about. It does really play out in some really quite fun ways at times. So while you're probably getting the idea by now that I do really quite enjoy this game, I'm definitely going to be continuing to play it some more, try and master some of its intricacies, it would be remiss of me to not talk a bit about... So, what could be improved? What don't I like? And there are definitely a few of these as well. And we're going to kick off talking about that one that you know is a bugbear for me in particular, the colours of the UI. And in fact that could be expanded to the battle UI in general. Now while in some areas it is really transparent and really good about what it's telling you and what information it's telling you, like for example, holding down Alt and being able to see enemy cooldowns is very clear. You can mouse over them to see what the actual ability is as well. That's all really clear. However, there is also a battle log that's showing you what's going on during that turn. That is pretty much useless. It tells you who casts an ability, but not who it hit, not how much damage it did, so it's not really very good for, oh, I missed what happened in that turn, let me have a quick look at what's going on. I mean, actually looking back like that isn't a thing you can do at all, because it only shows you the actions that took place in this particular phase of the turn. So as soon as the blast phase or the dash phase is done, that information just disappears and isn't available anymore. And often that's really important, especially when you're trying to learn a game that's got a lot of complexity to it like this. As a new player, you look at those bits and try and figure stuff out. On top of that, the actual UI itself for performing actions, looking at where your teammates are and so on, could be made a lot more clear. Some elements of it are too small, like the character icons for where people are moving, and some elements of it are too bright, too colourful, too matching the colour of the map underneath. Frequently I have trouble seeing what's going on with area of effect stuff because they've got a blue area of effect icon on top of a map that is a primarily blue colour, and so you miss a lot of those bits and bobs. Another area of the UI control process that I don't think is as obvious as it could be, is almost a little bit like it's fighting you a bit, is when you go and try and cancel a maneuver you've already placed in. So you've done your turn, you've put a couple of movements down, you used a couple of abilities, you've locked in that turn, and then something happens that makes you change your mind. So you hit escape, and you would expect that escape to just cancel what you did. Instead, the first time you press it, cancels the fact that you've locked in your turn, but nothing else. And then you'll press it again and it cancels just the last bit of the order sequence you put in. And you have to keep pressing it to get back to the start. Now, there's a few problems with this, one of which is, of course, when you press escape the first time, you'd really like it to just cancel your move, thank you very much. But also it means that you don't actually know how many times you have to press escape without going and looking at the UI and make another decision, which in 20 seconds, you've only got those 20 seconds. That can be really quite difficult, quite confusing. It would be much better if you just hit escape and it cancelled everything. Instead you're going to be going, okay, this escape has cancelled the lock-in, then this one's cancelled that move, then that one cancelled that ability. To me it just seems a bit clunky, the number of times I have messed up turns because I've failed the bit of the process where I was trying to cancel the turn rather than the bit of the process where I was trying to put the new one in is pretty damn high, and it gets pretty frustrating when you know that's what it was. You were like, oh, I hit escape, but it didn't cancel enough of the turn and I was clicking and it wasn't. At the same time, I mean, the fact that you get that frustrated about it is a pretty good sign that the game has got me engrossed, but I do feel like that's kind of fighting back against me a fair bit. Another really quick area which I think needs a fair bit of improvement is the matchmaking system. First of all, there is no, as far as I can tell at the moment, MMR setup or anything like that, so you are literally just thrown against random people, but more importantly it's how it matches the classes. It is very common to come up against a team comp that is identical to yours, all very, very, very similar to yours, with maybe one person playing a slightly different hero. It also doesn't seem to care in the slightest about the actual different class types. So you will go into games that have 4 of the firepower class, you know, the ones that do all the damage, and you'll go into a game where all of a sudden you've got 2 supports and a tank and 1 firepower. And when that happens, it'll match the enemy team in exactly the same way, so they'll have 2 supports, a tank and some fire. It's a bit odd. Now there is one argument here that would say actually that's not a bad thing. It does mean that there is no crutch role you must have in order for your team to be successful. You don't absolutely require that support class, you don't absolutely require a frontline on the tanking roles. But it did seem worth mentioning that as it currently sits at least, the group composition like that doesn't actually seem to make that much difference. There is certainly a lot going on, changes being done at the moment, ranked mode has been added since I've been playing as an example, but I hope that some of these little kind of clunky overlooked areas get a lot more polish, especially when it comes to matchmaking and trying to make sure the games are nice and balanced. The final area I've got to mention, just because of the number of slip-ups that me and friends have been making, is to do with the character design. Some of you guys will have already spotted this. Some of the characters they have are great, really unique, and they've all got some quite good backstories and lore to them and so on, mistook as other popular characters from other popular games. Mr. Reinhardt, Mr. Graves, or is that McCree? I'm not even sure if this is a criticism, because I think the reason often we see these similar characters showing up in competing games is because they legitimately do offer interesting gameplay, interesting mechanics, and a lot of them in the end are stereotypes. So is it really a thing to complain about? I don't know. It's certainly the elephant in the room that needed to be mentioned. You guys will have to make your own judgment on that. And speaking own judgment on that, I guess we should have... So, my final thoughts, and you guys will know by this point that I'm enjoying this game. I have some criticisms, but I am very much enjoying the title because I believe it's pretty unique, and it doesn't suffer from one of the things that I think really does plague online gaming quite frequently, which is just not enjoying defeats. It's not enjoying games where they snowball, it's not enjoying games where you feel like you're completely out of control. And that is just not a feeling I get in Atlas Reactor. Far from it, it's one where I keep getting surprised by both people's ingenuity in how they can use the different characters' mechanics, but also how enjoyable some of the games can be and how tight and close the games can get at times. And it really does become edge of the seat stuff. And this is a turn-based title, which I kind of really enjoy that idea that you could be in a turn-based game that has short rounds. I've never really had a round that lasted more than about 20 minutes. Quite high-octane action, and as I said, quite edge-of-the-seat stuff. Now, I'm pretty damn certain I'm going to play this a fair bit more. I can't judge yet how long that's going to be. I can't really get a mind on what longevity is going to be like in this, and I suspect that's all going to come down to the number of characters, the amount of updates they're able to put into the title to keep it evolving, keep it kind of interesting. For now though, it's giving me an experience, giving me a gameplay style that I don't have anywhere else. Even XCOM doesn't offer it. Just being able to jump in like that, minute and a half, you're inside a game with 4 other guys, and then 20 minutes later it's done and you're kind of sweating. XCOM doesn't offer that drop-in mentality a lot of the time, so for me it's really kind of stood out and been a bit of a different title. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. As usual, I tried to keep it a bit of my opinions, but still mostly factual, mostly back up my opinions with why I've got them. If you did enjoy it, if it helped you make a decision about it, then please hit that like button. If you didn't, then obviously dislike button's right next door, slam that away as hard as you like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for more, hopefully pretty cool content. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching guys, I will catch you for the next one.